Hi YouTube, welcome back to Wtf Rc Cars. So you've got your NB4 Plus and you can see the little sensor panel and you're wondering what on earth you do with that. So there's a bunch of different sensors. You've got the standard sensors or the older type. I'm going to take you through and show you how you connect them. You've also got the new iBus 2 and I'll do a separate video on that because it's a bit different to how you use it and you need different things if you're going to use more than one, or different ways of connecting them, should I say. So these sensors will work on any of the receivers. So the standard ones, they'll work on the enhanced receivers and the sort of standard receivers, so the FGR4S, FGR4 and that type, but they'll also work on the enhanced. The iBus 2 ones will only work on the enhanced. So let's bring in for a close-up look and see how we get on with these. Right, so how do we connect these things? So if we take a temperature sensor, we're going to go to his controller on the model memory that's attached to this RC. You're going to go to the RX menu. You're going to go to interface protocol. Now these are numbered one way, so you've got channel 1 to 4. And then they're lettered the opposite way, so A will be channel 4 and D will be channel 1. So we've obviously got a steering in channel 1, speed controller in channel 2, so we've got channels 3 and 4 that we can assign to various sensors. So for this one we're going to take NPA, which is new port A, which is channel 4. You're going to set it to iBus, not iBus 2. So iBus in. Once we've got that configured, you can then get your sensor, plug it into channel 4, and then we can turn the RC on. You'll know you've got it set correctly when you get a solid red light on the actual temperature sensor. So now we need to decide what we want to do with it. So if we click on a sensor panel, go to display sensors, you can see we're getting a temperature showing down here. All the ID zeros are the actual receiver itself. So your BVD, which I've shown in a video, will be 0 ID. And then temp sensor will show up as a different ID because it's an extra sensor. So if we go to choose sensors, we can click on one that we want to replace. Scroll down, temperature sensor 2. So while we're on this screen, you've also got the option of setting an alarm. So low value, you want to set it to a point that you know is not going to trigger. Stock is set at 0. As high value, this is where you're going to want it to alert. So if you've got this little sensor and you've got it mounted to your motor, you can just use a zip tie, and what I would do is get a thermal pad like what you use in PC components or electric components. Just put the thermal pad around it and then just zip tie it to the motor, and that'll be fine. It'll be close enough to read temperature. So if, for example, we want the motor not to reach more than 105 degrees C, so you could go in and you could set this to 105. And then what it'll do, as soon as your temperature reaches this, you'll get an alarm. Now, just so I can show you what it does, let's put it to something reachable. So I'll just set this to 20 degrees. So now we've got a temperature reading on a screen. And if we're using the RC and it starts to heat up, you'll get a red warning and it'll put the alarm on to tell you that it's reached the temperature you've got it set. So you know to either back off or stop using RC and let it cool down. And then if I touch that on motor that's cold, should bring temperature down quick enough. They do react really quickly to temperature change, but it's going to take it a little bit to cool down because it's not far off the room of this temperature of this room. But now it's dropped back below 20. You can see as alarm's not going off, and then as soon as it shoots back up, it'll go off again. But that's how to get one sensor running. Now with these, you may just want the information and you don't want the alarm going off constantly. So we can go into choose sensors, we can go into temperature, and you can turn the alarm off. So what do you do if you want to add another sensor? Well, on these sensors, they're daisy chainable. So if we get a voltage sensor, you can just plug the next sensor in, and these can go in any order you like, and then you should see a solid light on this sensor. Then if we go back into a sensor panels and we go to display, as we scroll further down, you get the next ID number and we get in voltage. So we can go on to here, choose display, choose a sensor, external voltage. Now again on this, you can set an alarm. So we've got a lower and a higher value. Again, the higher value, depending on what you're monitoring, you might want the higher value or not. But if we just turn them off for a second. So for this, let's set it up so we're going to monitor our actual LiPo. So you can plug these straight into the balance lead. So if we just connect positive and negative, and then we come off, and you can see we've got 7.51 volt. And you do need to connect both positive and negative, unlike the BVD. So unlike the battery voltage detection cable, these sensors need both. If you just plug the positive in, you're not going to get the correct reading. We're only reading 5.8 volt. So you do need the positive and negative connected on these. So you could put it straight into the balance lead. You could also wire it directly to your positive and negative battery leads coming from the ESC, or you could monitor an external battery. So again, if we were using this external battery to power some lights, then we can just plug in as positive and negative, and we can monitor that. And you can keep adding these sensors. I think they'll do quite a few of them. I'm not sure, it's been a while since I've looked, but I think something like 12. It's a crazy number of them that you can just keep daisy chaining in, but realistically you're only going to want so many. And depending what the actual battery is that you're monitoring depends on what you'd want the alarm set. So if you go into external voltage, we look at as alarm. As high voltage, you're going to want to set to a voltage that is above what the battery will ever be charged at, else your alarm will keep going off. But you don't need to go crazy over it. Just 0.1 of a volt over it will be enough. The low alarm is your important one. So if it's a standard 2S LiPo, you don't want to drain it more than, say, 3.3 volt per cell. So on a 2S LiPo, I tend to set these to around 6.6 volt if it's 2S. Now, depending on the quality of your LiPo, you may want to drop that down. So if you've got a lower, smaller capacity, lower sort of quality LiPo, you may want to drop this down to around 6 volt or just over 6, like 6.2, because of voltage sag, and you don't want the alarm triggering constantly. You just want the alarm triggering to tell you that the battery's going flat. So for me, the lipos that I've got hold the voltage pretty well, but for this example, if we set it to 6.6 volt, and then if I just disconnect this to simulate your battery going flat, you'll see you'll get an alarm telling you, and you know to stop using your RC or stop using the battery that you're using, because the voltage has dropped to the point where you may start causing damage to your lipo. But there is a few other sensors that they do. They do have the optical sensor for RPM and the magnetic sensor for RPM. Now, although technically you can use them to work out speed, so if you mount one of the RPM sensors to your spur gear, you can put the reflective tape on or the magnet and work out how many times it passes per how to get a revolution of the wheels, and you can put your rollout into the transmitter and do it that way. It's not a particularly accurate way of doing speed. Traxxas do it like that on theirs, and I've yet to find a Traxxas RC that the speed is anywhere in relation to real speed. It's just an arbitrary number at that point. Especially on RCs with bigger tyres where they start expanding, that throws the rollout out completely. So if you are going for like a speed, you're better off with a GPS module. But it's a quick and easy way of connecting multiple sensors. You only lose one channel, and you can have quite a number of these, but in reality there's only so many you're going to connect. But it's a nice way of monitoring your temperature. With the enhanced receivers, you've got the BVD cable that can do the battery anyway. If you were using a non-enhanced receiver, they have one port on them rather than four. They have one port that you can set to iBus, but basically they work the same way. But that just gives you a nice idea of how you connect these things. Just remember you set one of the ports to iBus for the stock sensors, and then you daisy chain the sensors. But hopefully that'll give you enough information to be able to set this up. And yeah, let's wrap this one up. So there you have it, the NB4 Plus and how you set up sensors. And it's exactly the same to do it on a non-enhanced receiver. So any of your classic receivers, you just have to go to the one assignable port on them and change it to iBus. Even the little FGR4S, that's got a port that's assignable to iBus. So it's something you can do on any of the receivers with these sensors. And sometimes it's just a useful thing for diagnosing issues, especially if you're doing like speed runs, or you've got your RC and it keeps cutting out and you're thinking, is battery dropping too much? You can just put the voltage detector on it, voltage sensor, and you can watch on your transmitter as you hit the throttle and you can see the voltage drop. If that's triggering your LVC on your ESC, then you need a battery with a higher C rating or a more genuine C rating, but that's a whole different topic. And the temperature one, likewise, I've seen plenty of Armour and Traxxas 3S cars where you run them on 3S and then all of a sudden your car will start going really slow, and it's basically overheating the motor. But with a temp sensor, you can keep an eye on your motor temperatures, and then you can gear down appropriately, or just give your car a good few minutes to cool down. I mean, LiPo batteries nowadays are getting pretty huge. I've seen 10,000 milliamp hour batteries. So if you look at a lot of these manufacturers, maybe they were thinking 5,000 milliamp hour batteries is biggest. You can run into issues where they start overheating, but that's an entirely different video. So far on this, we've covered quite a lot on the NB4 Plus, and this one is just for the sensors. So hopefully you find this useful or entertaining, or just like listening to my incessant ramblings. But thanks again for watching WTF Rc Cars. Don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, share to friends and family, and catch you guys again in the next one.